once I'm really thrilled that there is more women in this audience rather than men. And there's a good side to it also, and there's also wondering why so many women, where are the men, and why are the men also getting involved? We need to have equal representation of both men and women in human resources because it has to be balanced. Everything we do, it has to be balanced. So they say that you never enter the same river twice. Hmm? So if you're standing in one place, you enter a river, you take a bath, you come out, and then next day you go back into the river in the same place. It's not the same river. River has moved on. The water has changed. Something has changed. So time is like that. You never enter the same time, same organization every time. Every time I meet the same person is a new person. There's something different. Some things have changed. And very often, like for example, I met Mr. Bhaskar Joshi here after nearly 15 years. I used to know him when he used to come as visiting faculty to NMIMS. I met him, but obviously he's not the same Bhaskar Joshi I used to know. There's something new, there's a lot more experience he's gathered along the way, and something different about him. So they never enter the same river twice. That is the nature of change, and that is the nature of time. So, what is it that we in HR are doing about the river of HR? So, I joined the human resources profession many, many years ago. It was 1981 when I entered the workforce as a personnel officer. It used to be called personnel officer in those days. Before that, it was called labor relations. Then it was called personnel. Then it was called human resources. And then it was HRM. Today it's called chief people officers. Now we are people officers. We are HR business partners. Even the designations in our jobs have changed. And the world of HR has seen enormous amount of change over the years. So having witnessed so many things in the past, I would say that if I was to extrapolate into the future, today's session is about extrapolating into the future. I would say that extrapolating in the future, the past is no indication. No guide, nothing of what we did in the past is going to hold good into the future. So let's explore what are some of the innovations that we believe will work going forward into the future. The theme is turning trials into triumphs. So HR is going to do a lot of experimentation, a lot of innovation, a lot of trials of new thoughts, new initiatives, new ideas, new ways of doing human resources. And how do we make sure that these are successful and turn into triumphs and they don't fall flat? What are the pitfalls also along the way we will try to explore. So let's look at that. This is something about myself. You heard my biodata, but my big passion in life today where I am, my passion also changed over the years, but today where I am, I have only two things to do. One is I help the corporates build their HR capability and build their organization cultures. And second, I help individuals, and this is more of a passion today than before, to live a life of mind, body, heart, and soul alignment. So these are two passions that I carry in life. And I do believe the biodata is only part of the introduction. Oh, there's something of what we are going to do. So what is the nature of change that we are encountering today? Let's try and understand. We all know that there is a Gen Z and there is a Gen Alpha in the making, and then there was a millennials before that. And we already have all those stereotypes in our head and all those thoughts that what is this Gen Z about and what are the kind of people entering the workforce. But let's look at some of the things that are changing for good. The first thing that we find in organizations is the nature of actual employment. There is, earlier when we started work, you had to come on time and we would leave on time. And we were just mentioning, that, boss would call us on a Sunday, come, there's some job to be done. And we would definitely go and we would do those jobs willingly, and we would just, apply ourselves to our work and our roles completely. But that was before there was computers, that was before there was social media, that was before there were so many, things that I was juggling in my life. And today I want to have my time with my Facebook and my Instagram. I want to make my reels also on my Facebook and Instagram. And I also want to post some blogs here and there. And I also want to take care of my children, drop them to school, bring them back. And I also want to do some small gig on the side, maybe a passion or a hobby that I have of doing something fun that I. So people are now more and more inclined to do what we call gig work or hybrid work. And when the COVID happened, we know for sure that it was possible to do and achieve your goals and whatever role that you had in your organization simply by working from home and interacting with others. We know that. So just before COVID also, I have my son, he works in Auckland in New Zealand. He was telling me, we've got a new work rule here. We are working 9-day fortnights. And this was even before COVID. 9-day fortnights meaning 1 week I work 5 days and 1 week I work 4 days. And then the next week I work 5 days and the next week I 4 days. So it's not really a 4-day work week. It's actually a 9-day fortnight. So they were experimenting with that and they continue with that. January this year, Amazon said to all its workers that you come back to work 100%. There's no such thing as hybrid working anymore. And they saw a lot of attrition because of that. A lot of people don't want to join Amazon because they're demanding that you come to work 5 days a week or 6 days a week and spend 40 hours. And Mr. Narayan Murthy said something about 45 to 50 hours of working every week, 70 hours of working every week. So that becomes hugely unpopular with the young generation. And we find that there is a lot of mental stress also that causes that kind of work life, 70 hours a week, causes a lot of stress. And people are committing suicide and dying because of stress on the work. The young generation today, Gen Z, they're mentally very fragile. They cannot handle 70 hours of work. And we have to be empathetic to that too. So hybrid working, gig working is here to stay. Even companies like TCS have demanded that every employee should come back to work. If you come back to work, you get more promotions, you get more compensation, you get more incentives. If you don't come back to work, it's your choice. You can still work from home, but at least 2 days a week you have to come. But you will not get the promotions, you will not get the increments, you will not get all the bonuses that people who come to work regularly will get. One of the other changes is that there was an organization in which I was coaching a lot of women for their women leadership program. And this was for several years before, the pandemic struck. And it was just women, I was coaching them in groups. And there were several groups of women we were coaching. And always the women who were married, and this was in the young age group of between, 30 and 35 to 40, the entry level, mid-management level kind of women. Some were married, some were not. And those who were married would find it very difficult to come for the sessions. Because, they've got a child at home and they've got, lack of support. My mother-in-law is not well, she can't take care of my child, so I have to sit at home and take care of my child. So these kind of stories were common before the pandemic. That the women who were married wanted flexible working hours. And there were also a lot of women who were young and not married, and they didn't mind coming to work regularly. 40, 45 hours a week, maybe some of them were doing even 70 hours a week. This was before the pandemic. Then the pandemic happened. All the coaching sessions I was doing for these women went online. And for 2 years, we did all the coaching online. And then when the pandemic was over, I continued the coaching for these women. Every year there's a new batch of women, and I'm finding a change. I'm finding that after the pandemic, the women who were married and with children, they said, hey, we want to come to work. Enough, we can't handle having the child and working and all the pressures from home and everything. We want to come to work 5 days a week. At least we have some proper routine to come to, and we'll manage all the challenges that comes with that. And it was the single women who were not married who said, hey, we want flexible working hours, we want hybrid working, we want to have our own time, we want to party and wake up late in the morning, and we want to do our Instagramming and our Facebook, and we want to go shopping trips, we want to do all the things. and we'll do the work also. We are not going to compromise on our goal achievement. So things changed. This was one of the big changes we found in remote working and in hybrid working. So companies like TCS and Amazon, who had formally announced that there will be hybrid working, have now taken back those announcements and they're getting people to come back on the job. Yes, I can understand who is taking the decisions. The people of my generation taking those decisions. And the people of my generations, we know the difference. We know when we're meeting people face to face, when we talk to them, how much more value there is. But when we talk to them on a Zoom call or a Google Meet call, then how much value there is. So people of our generation are taking decisions for the Gen Z and the millennials. And I think that's where the big gap is. It's not going to work. It's not going to work. And this is a change that has been predicted. Several years ago, I think sometime in 1990s or early 2000, there was a book written by an author called Daniel Pink. You can Google it. Daniel Pink wrote a book called The Free Agent Nation. This was in 1990s and 2000. And Daniel Pink is a very famous author. He's been on the New York, every book he writes comes on the New York Times bestseller list, and he's one of the most celebrated authors in the non-fiction category. And what is a free agent nation? A free agent nation, he envisaged the future, like Alvin Toffler, that there will be individuals in society, and every individual is a bundle of unique talents, unique skills, unique competencies, and he will tell himself to the best employer, whosoever hires him, I'm a free agent. I'd like to freelance. I'd like to work for whoever is willing to hire my talent and my skill. I don't necessarily have to fit into a job description or a job role or a particular set of goals that have been defined for me by somebody else. So Daniel Pink had envisaged this future. And that future is happening today. That if you look at the young generation, they are very much self-empowered. They are very much self-made individuals. And they know what their capabilities are. They know their minds. They know what they like. They know what they don't like. And they know exactly how much they want to earn. And then they want to earn for a year. Then they want to take a break, make that money, go and do some sightseeing and go around the world trip, travel a bit, do something, take time off, take a year off. In our time, we never took a year off, no? They say, call it a gap year. We want to take a gap year. What is a gap year? Means 1 year I don't want to work. And I'll come back after 1 year and then see what work I want to have. So Daniel Pink's free agent nation is becoming a reality. And people of your and my generation may sit in the CHRO's role at TCS and at Amazon and some companies like that and tell people come back to work, but it's not going to last very long. In the next 5 or 10 years, you will see the change has been irreversible. We'll try to reverse it, we'll try to bring it back, but change is irreversible. You can't make the river the same as it was 5 years ago. The river has changed. So that's some of the changes. That's one thing is happening. The other thing is the rise of employee wellness. Being a psychologist and integrative nutrition health coach, today that's my new avatar. I have also had to reinvent myself because I followed what my own journey in life was. I find that emotional, psychological wellness and physical wellness at the workplace is one big concern that's happening. Very recently, there's a company in Bombay called HR Annexi, and they run one of the country's, India's biggest workplace wellness awards. There's a model against which we look at the wellness programs of companies. And today companies have wellness programs. They have, till 20 years ago, there was no such thing. What is a wellness program? Yeah, we have a welfare center. You can go get some polio vaccines and some medical attention and first aid for yourself and all. But today the companies run wellness programs. And they invited me last 3 times on the juries of these wellness awards. I studied and understood and listened to presentations of over 120 companies on what they are doing for wellness. And I'm amazed. at the kind of time, money, effort invested by CHROs. In fact, I do believe that today the CHRO must be the chief wellness officer of the company. The CHRO's job is also to be the chief wellness officer of the organization. He or she is responsible for the emotional well-being of the company, the physical well-being of the company. And why? Yes, it makes business sense. There's a business case also. Because more productive employees, the more physically fit you are, the more productive you are. The more emotionally, competent you are or emotionally intelligent you are, the more effective you are as a performer, as a leader, as a manager, and whatever job role you may have. And then you don't have all the stigma of people committing suicides in your company, or people dropping dead. Like we saw in Ernst & Young, one young girl just dropped dead because she worked too hard. She didn't have time to sleep, and she was working night and day, and it didn't suit her. And the young generation, our time, it was possible. I remember there were times in my organization, and many of my students also whom I taught in my early years, they would work for companies, and if there was a work, then there was some companies even used to have a dormitory, in their campus, in their premises, and there would be beds provided. If you're working late, you don't want to make the journey home in Delhi, and sometimes in Bombay also, late night, you don't want to commute from Bandra, Kurla to maybe Thane, or wherever your home is, or Panvel, wherever your home is. You have a place to sleep, and you keep your toothbrush in your drawer, and you're ready the next morning when there's a shower. You're ready the next morning for work again. So, but today, it's very stressful. The same lifestyle that we thrived on, the same stress that we thrived on, today is becoming fatal. So, wellness is becoming a big concern. And I do believe that companies may say, oh, we've given this girl the same work that we give everybody. Unfortunately, she died. It's not our fault. Everybody has the same amount of workload, and she couldn't handle it. And we've been giving this kind of workload for many years now to our new chartered accountants. And that's the stand that is taken today by many organizations. And one of the HR officers I was talking to said, if you want to make an omelette, you have to break some eggs. So if a few people get mentally stressed out, it's okay, we need to make the omelette, that's our job. Another CHRO says, अरे दाल बनानी है, pressure तो डालना होगा ना, नहीं तो दाल कैसे गलेगी. So pressure, work pressure, I understand work pressure is there, everybody is there. How the company culture helps people cope with it is important. And believe me, one of the statistics that came in this workplace wellness thing I was talking about, the awards that was talking about, there was a research that was presented, a study done globally over 5 or 6 continents, all across, largely in India, from India. Large chunk of the respondents were Indian companies, employees, people. Only 17% of the people in companies that have workplace wellness programs, only 17% people felt that they benefited from it. So the results of all the investment in wellness somehow is missing the mark. If only 17% people feel that, there is a wellness program, my company is taking care of me physically, mentally, and only 17% felt the benefit of that, there is something wrong. But I do believe that workplace wellness is still very important. And I do believe that companies are going to learn how to improve that number of 17% to more. And I do believe companies need to continue tweaking and working towards what I call a need-based wellness program. Because what happens is the CHRO sitting in his ivory tower is saying, I need to do something about wellness. Let's get some yoga expert, let's get a stress management expert, let's have workplace wellness month. One company I was talking yesterday, they have a workplace wellness month in the month of November. And so let's do these things for wellness. Let's do financial literacy for financial wellness. Let's do physical, let's do a marathon running. Let's do what you call biggest losers program. One CHRO was sitting next to me and said, we've got the biggest losers program. So I said, what is that? So he says, no, we've got a lot of obesity in our campus. So we've had people who's going to lose the biggest, maximum amount of weight in the next 6 months. So I said, wow, that seems like something very noble. Tell me, in 6 months people are going to lose weight. Yeah. Somebody lost 20 kilos last time. I said, but are you providing some support services of a health coach? Because I'm a health coach too, So I said, are you providing support services of a health coach? Because people could be doing crash dieting, starving themselves to death, or doing all kinds of unhealthy things which are not sustainable, or they could lose that weight and gain it back again. 80% people gain back the weight again. What do you mean, health coach? What do you mean, health coach services? I said, no, people need support to make permanent lifestyle changes. It cannot be done in 6 months. So yes, I do believe companies have still to learn how to deliver wellness programs based upon needs of people rather than thinking, I know what best is to be done about wellness. What is it the people need? And that might improve the rate from 18% to more. So I do believe that chief HR officer is going to also be chief wellness officer. There is, if you Google it online, you will find there are job descriptions of chief wellness officers. And if you want to apply for a job of a chief wellness officer, what are the qualifications that are required? All that is there. So it's becoming a reality. And that's one of the changes that is irreversible. So that's the nature of change. This is something everybody will talk about, technology, AI. Everybody will talk about. And we've got a whole lot of theories, what is machine learning, what is generative AI, what is this, what is that. We all use ChatGPT. How many of you use ChatGPT? Yes. So more than 80% people in this room use ChatGPT almost every day, or at least 2 or 3 times a week. And I'm also not going to deny, I also use ChatGPT. It's not, it's not illegal, immoral. As long as I tell somebody, or even if I don't tell anybody, it's fine. I've developed and curated some things, and I've done some workshop based on some input I got from somewhere. So yes, so we all are using ChatGPT. But do you know, I have some figure here that the world is scheduled to spend some $747 billion are going to be spent globally on artificial intelligence in 2025. This was just the figure. $747 billion is going to be the spend on artificial intelligence. And Indian estimate is at least $8 billion worth of money is going to get spent in India alone on artificial intelligence. But we are an HR convention here. So what do? So I have a friend of mine, classmate of mine, who didn't work in HR. We were all HR people, but he left HR. He used to work in India in HR. He left many years ago. In 1991, he left. And he went off to the USA. And he started working in the field of artificial intelligence in 1991. And he has been working in AI for last 30 years or so. And last year I had visited USA. He lives in Silicon Valley. He used to work very senior professional in Sun Microsystems. And then when Sun was sold, he left the company and he kind of leading a retired life. But he said, I can't just sit at home and do nothing. So he developed an AI tool in HR, artificial intelligence tool for HR. It's in performance management domain. So he was taking me through the whole thing, that what all he has developed. It helps a company to set strategic goals and then how the goals are cascaded down. And the tool is called Goal Align. And the Goal Align, it helps you to align the goals. It helps to cascade down. It helps to people to define the task that will help to achieve the goals. It suggests, the artificial intelligence suggests, okay, if you have this goal, then how can you achieve it? These are the things I would suggest you do. You can keep editing it, you can keep changing, and every time you edit, it learns. So every year, every PMS cycle, it improves, and it gets more and more customized to your. So he says, Anita, I want this, and he's got a few customers already in the US. He says, can you sell it for me in India? So in India, we've got one client that is adopting this tool, and it's a standalone tool, but the client is saying, no, I want it to feed into my SAP, I want it to feed into my Dove inbox. And so how can I align? So we are trying to develop the technology and write the APIs that it takes to connect this goal alignment tool with the Darwin box so that your SAP and your all your dashboards get updated. So there's AI, and these are like standalone solutions for AI. There are learning management systems, there are performance management systems, there are recruitment and selection tools in AI-based, so many standalone systems. But last week I was in Latin America, and I was in Mexico, and I was speaking to the Latin American head. We went to visit them, the Latin American head of Oracle for the entire in Latin America. They're developing their Oracle has a ERP solution. Everyone knows ERP. SAP is ERP, Enterprise Resource Planning, as it was called in the old days. So the Oracle is an ERP system. And the presentation and the demos that we witnessed were that each and every part of the ERP is now being enabled by artificial intelligence. So it could be the financial management, financial accounting module, which is of your ERP. It's like getting your general ledgers in place and getting your balance sheet in place and feeding in your real-time financial ratios and all. But now it's being enabled by AI, which means it's not only is it collecting data on its own, but it's also processing that data on its own. It's also benchmarking the data with big data analytics, and it's also giving you suggestions for how do you tweak your balance sheet, how do you improve your balance sheet. So each and every part, the HR module, the marketing module, the branding modules, each and every module of the ERP is now being tweaked by AI. And that's already hitting the markets in the West. That's $747 billion that we are talking about is being spent as we speak. And if you feel, नहीं हमारे company में तो काम चल रहा है and we are doing fine, you will be out of date. And there are so many better and more efficient ways of doing it. And it requires a completely open mind to do. So technology and AI is already happening as we speak. It's already happening. And if you're not on the bandwagon, then you're already on your way to obsolescence. So you have to embrace this change and take it on. And I can talk endlessly on some of the things that we hear. And process is king. Process and content is king. I'm speaking largely, I know about Geo is largely MSME sector, an SME sector. And I know a lot of the MSMEs. I was just talking to Prasad over breakfast, and I was sharing with him. I said, one of the biggest trends I'm seeing today is in the MSME sector and their requirement for HR. Many drivers, for example, in 2025, SEBI has in the pipeline almost 250 to 300 companies lined up for an IPO. Everyone knows IPO, no? Almost 250 companies are lined up, and these are all MSMEs that have grown big. I'm myself currently engaged with an HR transformation exercise for an MSME. Started as a smaller enterprise, but today it's become 2,000 crore business. But they have no HR process in place. Now, SEBI has a lot of requirements before you go for an IPO, which are compliance, but many of them are HR. Of course, related to salaries, payrolls, compensation benefits, ESOPs, incentives, and many of them are, and performance management. So these are all things that the MSMEs have to do before they go for an IPO. And because they are going for an IPO in 2025, they are hiring consultants like myself and many others to help put the processes in place, because process is king. They do not have processes. They do not have a proper training needs analysis system that helps them understand what the training requirements are. They do not have compensation. The company I'm consulting for doesn't even have an HR manual in place. They don't have a leave policy in place. When I go to the shop floor and ask, at home we employ our maid servants and our drivers, And whenever they want leave, they will ask us and say कि साहब मेरे को गणपति पे जाना है गाँव, मेरे को ये जाना है, तो ठीक है छुट्टी ले लो, आज मेरा तबीयत ठीक नहीं है, ओके ठीक है छुट्टी ले लो. Or sometimes they just dandi maro, which is all right. Okay, so they don't have a leave policy. Leave runs like that. Anybody who wants leave tells us boss अरे मैं जा रहा हूँ, okay ठीक है जाओ. अच्छा मेरे को आज तबीयत ठीक नहीं आऊँगा, okay fine. They don't have a leave policy that tells that you are entitled to how many days casual leave, sick leave, privilege leave, and all the other leaves that are possible. All right, so they treat the employees like we treat our servants, and the company is doing fine, it's grown, and the people are employed, and there's hardly any turnover, there's very little attrition in the company, they've reached 2,000 crores. But they cannot grow beyond this without. So the process, you have policies, processes, SOPs, HR manuals. So we are helping this company, we've got a 6-month assignment to help them put all of that into a performance management system, goal setting, feedback, assessment, all that, recruitment policies, job descriptions, nothing is in place. So most of the MSMEs have grown because of entrepreneurial spirit. They have grown because of passion of the promoters and owners, and they've grown, but they've not had processes to support them. And beyond a point, you cannot grow without process, because a process is the foundation. Anything that you want to build after a point, you need a process. How are we doing on time? 10 minutes more? Okay. I'll open to questions also. This is a big one. Last night I was talking to somebody who had come having dinner with us. He's from UK. And he says, there's something called wokeism. So I said, what is wokeism? You know, I Googled and I said, wokeism kya hota hai, you know? So it's a whole rising thought which is liberal and which is I am unique, I am special, and I have to have my own needs satisfied. I'm a woke person. I'm awake. I'm a woke person. So people are waking up, and the young generation is woke generation. They are awake to the fact that they do not want to fit into a role in a job. And if they do it for a bit, and after a point there's a quiet resignation, a 9-to-5 job, they come, they clock in, they do their work and they clock out, and there's no commitment beyond that. There's a woke generation that's coming into the workforce. And it's not just in big cities or in the Western world, it's also in smaller cities. Thanks to the internet, people are becoming influencers, face reel providers, etc., etc. So diversity, inclusion, equity, DEI and belongingness become very important. How do I handle that individual uniqueness of each person? How do I create a culture where everybody is welcome? Vasudev Kutumbakam, one world, one family is very, very important. I can talk endlessly on this one, but I will move forward. So what is the HR role? What is the role of HR in all of this changing world? And I was doing a workshop for a client last month, and this workshop was on creating an enterprise mindset. And I just put people into groups and I said, okay, let's define what we mean by enterprise mindset. So somebody said, no, strategic thinking is enterprise mindset. Okay, so now write a definition of what is strategic thinking. So what do you think they came up with? They said a strategic thinking, a strategic plan is something that tells you for the year what you're going to achieve, how you're going to achieve the tasks that you're going to do, and by when you're going to do, and who is the owner of those tasks. I said, that's not a strategic plan, that's an operational plan. What is the difference between a strategic thinking and an operational plan? And I'm finding that's what is missing in the younger generation of leaders. We are good managers. We manage well, we manage tasks, we manage goals, we manage all the things that we have to do to achieve. The goal is set by somebody else, maybe not even in this country if I'm a multinational. I'm given the goal and I have to achieve it, and I manage to achieve it well. Good efficiencies, good effectiveness, that's what it's about. But leading is not about doing tasks. We know that, don't we? Leading is not, when we taught management, we say management is the art and science of getting things done. All right, that's good management. How do I get things done? Through men, machines, materials, money, and all the other M's that are there. That's definition of management. But being a good manager is not enough. Being a good HR manager is not enough. Being a strategic HR manager is what is required. And that's the part that is sorely missing today. And a lot of my CXO coaching goes into building that quality and building that skill. Because many of times, even CEOs themselves are getting caught in doing things or getting things done through people. That's good management. But what is a strategic visionary leader? Somebody who knows and understands what's happening in the market, somebody who knows which way to work. You know, the theme of this conference is from trial to triumph. A good manager will meet all the trials. He will survive all the trials. He'll survive all the challenges. But a good leader will triumph, will go beyond that. So knowing what's happening in the world outside, knowing the external, knowing what kind of company you are, what are your capabilities. When we teach business strategy, we say external environment, internal environment analysis. What's happening in the world outside? My competition, my rivals, my suppliers, my vendors. You take a Porter's 5 forces analysis model and try and apply that on your company. How many people will learn so much about that? So it's about thinking strategically. And then how do I navigate through that? So I believe every HR manager must develop certain strategic thinking skills. And this is something that is sorely missing. And I was sharing with Prasad in the morning some case studies of one CHRO I'm coaching, how I'm helping her navigate her HR function in a way that's more strategic and successful for her as well as for the organization. So I can talk endlessly, but time is embracing all the tech that is there. We need to do that. I've already spoken enough about some of the tech world that's happening. You know, we are talking about Mr. Narendra Modi speaks a lot about data analytics, big data, and big, the value of big data. And we are collecting a lot of data. You take a flight from Bombay to Baroda, and they've captured your face on the Digi Yatra. They know where you were, where you went. And I just came back 2 days ago from Mexico via US. And when I was crossing at Dallas airport, I said, hello, he didn't even ask for my passport, just the facial recognition. He knew where I was coming from, where I was going to. And I said, don't you want to see my passport? I asked the immigration officer. Not required. He did not even see my passport. Everything was in my face, and he had the data at his fingertips. In India, we are still developing the applications. We don't know what to do with the big data yet. I do believe there is some effort on by Delhi Municipal Corporation that they're going to analyze the movement of garbage trucks and the disposal of garbage, compostable waste and non-compostable waste. They're going to use big data for that. But do we see any big applications of big data being used by our government or by big corporations? Still very nascent stage. We've got a long way to go. We are way behind the rest of the world when it comes to big data and predictive analytics. When I was last week in Mexico, I was at a business school called the IGADE Business School, which is considered to be the #1 business school in Latin America, as well as it beats many of the American business schools also in terms of its a lot of parameters. And I was speaking to the professors. They say we are not doing case study method anymore. I said, okay, you're not teaching by case study. Everyone who has done an MBA and students from MBA here also, you learn through case study, no case method, but they're not doing case method anymore in the US or in America. They're doing what? Learning labs. Now, what is a learning lab? We visited some of these learning labs to understand what they're about. So there's a decision-making lab, for example. And it's meant for a group of 10 students, or it can have 3 groups of 10 students. There are cameras and there are voice recorders that monitor. You've got 1 hour. A case is given to you and you have access to a lot of big data, and the data is on all the screens, and you have to solve a complex problem using all those big data that's available to you, and make a decision. At the end of 1 hour, you have to come back with a decision. And all your process is monitored by the faculty through a camera and through a video recording. And you can play that back, your audio and video, you can play it back. And you learn whether you did it the right way, you didn't do it the right way. How could you improve your decision making? What data did you see? What you didn't see? What you missed out on? What you didn't miss out on? So there is a whole implication for learning development which is coming through lab-based learning, which incorporates data-driven decision making. For leadership training, they had a lab which was an escape room. You play it as a game, escape room. There's a room. You're given a situation. You have to escape from that room. There's a fire happening in the hotel. You have to find a way out, etc., etc. So the situation is given to you, and then you're put in that room until you do not solve the problem. There are a lot of clues over there. Till you do not solve the problem, you are not allowed to leave the room. And every conversation is recorded, video and audio. And you're given feedback on all your leadership competencies, to what extent you communicated, you didn't communicate, you listened, you didn't listen, you led, you didn't lead, you were able to influence, you were not able to influence. All the leadership competencies are taught to you in a real way, not in a theoretical way. So they're learning through labs, and it's all driven by data. Before I close, I want to talk about something. This is got hidden behind the video: psychological safety. Today, organizations, the biggest core, I do believe, of fulcrum of organization culture or human resources is how do I provide a psychological safety in my organization. I find more and more I go to companies and I'm finding that people are hesitant to speak up. They are not authentic in what they say. They will sugarcoat the truth. They will say only the positive things and politically correct things. They will butter up their bosses, not tell the truth. So there is a lot of lack of authenticity, and it's increasing. Why? Because people don't feel safe. If I say what's on my mind, really on my mind, if I'm able to speak the truth, it will backfire on me. And the organization cannot handle anyone who speaks the truth. Right. Why? Because we do not provide a speak-up culture. We do not provide psychological safety in the organization. So psychological safety is the core thing that I do believe HR needs to provide, so that people can speak up, speak their mind, not have to hide behind positive statements only, and not hesitate to speak the truth, and dissent if they feel like dissenting, and speak their minds. Then and then, only then, will we be able to call ourselves HR of the future. And then and only then we'll be able to move to... So a few more things were there, but I'm closing. I want to take questions if they're required. One thing is about how do I build a culture of agility. There are ways to build organizations because change is happening so fast. How do I keep increasing the response of change? There's a wonderful story of Satya Nadella when he took charge of Microsoft. Everyone knows the case study of Satya Nadella. Please read online or please watch his videos of his case study online. Bill Gates started Microsoft and ran it and grew it. Market cap was huge, fantastic growth, but those were the 2000s, those were the 80s and 90s and early 2000s. And there was a different kind of leadership style that was required. So Microsoft was a very alpha male kind of an organization. You got to deliver, do or die. And any new idea you have is going to be put through a lot of scrutiny before it is accepted. We don't want any bugs in our windows and things like that. So it was a very stringent, very hardcore kind of an organization culture. Then Bill Gates handed over to Steve Ballmer, and Steve Ballmer was another one who was like same way. And during Steve Ballmer's time, there was no innovation that happened in Microsoft. There was a decline in market capitalization. All the other companies were shooting ahead, but Microsoft market cap remained plateaued and did not grow. Steve Ballmer's approval ratings were down to 15% and things like that. And then the board decided that they needed a new leader, and they chose Satya Nadella. And Satya Nadella is a very, you have seen his pictures. He's very thin, frail. He's not like the strong, hurly-burly. Because Steve Ballmer today, he owns a football team and he coaches football, and he's perfect for that kind of a role. But when Satya Nadella took over, he's, I mean, just imagine him in this big Microsoft boardroom, massive imposing structure, and he's sitting there, very diminutive figure. I said, no, first board meeting, we'll have him in the lawns in the canteen. And he organized the board meeting outside rather than in the big room which has all this power structures in it. And on the day he became the CEO, Satya Nadella's wife gave him a book as a gift. The book is by Carol Dweck, and that book is called The Growth Mindset. And Carol Dweck is a professor at Stanford University, Department of Psychology, not management school. And she's written this book about the growth mindset, and mostly with reference to children and child psychology. But he found it very valuable for management. And he adopted a lot of things from that book. Of course, it was also part of his upbringing as an Indian person, that the world is one and we are one family and we've got to be inclusive and more democratic leader, more inclusive leadership style, more relating and less imposing organization structures. So he started changing the organization culture from being know-it-all kind of culture to learn-it-all kind of culture. And there were many things that he did and his HR team did. You can read about it online. It's a wonderful story of success, of how a company like Microsoft actually intentionally built a culture of agility and learn it all. And 4 years into his term, he wrote a book called Hit Return, which documented all this. So if you want to buy that copy of that book, please do. It's worth reading. Hit Return. But today it's 10 years since he took charge, and the market cap of Microsoft has tenfold increased. And Satya Nadella's approval ratings are 90%, higher than anybody else, the Glassdoor ratings. So there's a lot to say about building a culture of agility. Don't say it's not possible. It is. And lifelong learning also matters. There are a lot of pitfalls that lie ahead. Not all trials will you triumph. Remember that. Sometimes, the triumph means like 2 steps forward, 5 steps backward. There are lots of pitfalls. People may not go along with you, and people will fall off along the way. And sometimes even HR itself, there is attrition. I begin with one intention, and then 1 year later I have to drop that because I've got another job or my seat became too hot. So HR itself is subject to change, attrition, and all the vagaries of pecking order, politics, organization dynamics that exist. So HR itself is not immune to the change and immune to the mental health problems, or immune to physical health problems as well. So there are a lot of pitfalls that lie ahead. I can talk endlessly on that, but I'm going to stop here. I'll take a few questions from the audience as long as the time permits, madam. Yes? One or two questions? One question? Any one question? Yes, sir.
Good morning, ma'am. I'm here.
Yes.
Yeah. Ma'am, one question that was coming to me on the wellness fund, there are two. One is that where does the accountability or this thing of family start, and where does the accountability or the proactiveness of the organization, is there a boundary to that, or is it when we are creating our wellness strategies, or when we are creating our psychological safety strategies, is there somewhere where that comes in? And the second part is, since it is turning trials into triumphs,
Yeah.
if you could share any real life intervention that you took up with your clients, which either failed badly and we learned a lot from it, or we are moving towards a triumph and we can learn from that experience.
So to answer your first question, where does the boundary lie? To me, the whole person comes to work, not just one human being or one body that comes to work. The whole person comes to work. If you have seen that movie, Charlie Chaplin, movie called Modern Times, And it is a 1940s movie, still relevant today, still modern times. You know, Charlie Chaplin is this worker in a factory and is an assembly line, and the assembly line had been newly developed in those days. And his job is to simply tighten two screws. Some machine part comes and he's tightening two screws and the part goes away. And then the person comes, the time and motion study manager comes and he says, why one screw? Give him two screws to tighten two screws at the same time, two spanners. So he's tightening two screws, not just one, because he's got two hands. He can do twice the job in the same time. So he's spending 8 hours a day doing this. Just tightening and it goes. And he tightens and it goes. And he tightens, it goes. Tighten, tighten. Then by the time he's tired, he hangs up his coat. He goes to pick up his coat. His hands continue moving. He's going home down the street. His hands continue moving. And Charlie Chaplin does it in a very funny way. We all know that. It's hilarious, but it tells you the fact that the whole person comes to work. Whatever happens at work goes home. Whatever is at home. Then he goes home and his wife yells at him, what is this? And he's continuing to do this. And then he comes back to the work the next day and his wife is in his mind also. And he's still doing the same thing. So the whole person comes to work. Okay, now it's a seamless boundary when it comes to work. There are times we create a guideline for ourselves and we say, okay, this is where work stops and this is where work doesn't stop. But tell me, I was talking to somebody, who in HR, and I was saying, hey, listen, you work in a plant, at 6 o'clock your buses leave and everybody goes home. So you guys don't have pressure of work, no? Sab ghar chale jate hain and they're home with their families. He says, are you crazy? People have pressure because even from home they're on the phone. And at night also they're on the phone. And the boss is still demanding stuff on Sunday. So there's no such thing as the buses have gone and we have gone home and now we are at home and the switch is switched off. We are still at work. So when you are expecting the employee to be available to you even after he goes home, why are you saying, I don't want to take care of his wellness once he goes home? So where is the boundary line is for you to decide. It's for company culture that decides it. And if the company culture is saying that when you're at home, you're still available to me as a resource, then yes, the family is part of that. If the company is saying, okay, now 5 o'clock, you go home, be with your family, my responsibility ends here, then by all means you draw the boundary there. But it's up to you to draw the boundary. And it's the whole person does come to work, remember that. And your second question was about actual case study. So,
Ma'am, we will conclude now.
Yeah, so time is also short. You can catch me during the tea break. Yeah, I'll definitely share. There are 2 or 3 examples right on my mind right now. Sir, you had a question? Just ask the question, then we will...
We can have one last short question in the interest of time.
His was fastest finger first, but he didn't get the mic first.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. See, at the cost of generalizing, there is a perception that the Gen Z and Gen Alpha, their mental resilience is not that great, and that reflects in the workplace. And when it comes to leaders, people leaders, who primarily are from Gen Y or X, we see that the real philosophy towards people championing has become very, very transactional. It is not really backed by solid philosophy. It is rather putting some programs in place and running some initiatives and ticking the boxes. Now, these 2 issues, should we really do some substantive work as CXOs, or we just take it as a passing tide of time? Thank you.
So very briefly, there will be 2 types of organizations. One, that they will continue to become more and more transactional. And there will be one kind of metropolis corp kind of mega corp kind of company where there will be complete dehumanization and people will be very transactionally dealt with. And there will be at the same time an emergence of a leadership, and we see those happening all the time. And leadership that really inspires and that really builds and that really engages people. You'll have both. The world is getting polarized, and this will be one polarization also you will see. That's how I see it happening in the future.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for sharing your insight.